As some of you may know, I main support. I love being that guy who dives in all by himself and gets that 5-man Leona stun. I love being a tanky son of a bitch. However, as everybody who plays something other than Team Builder knows, you don't always get your role. The role that I tend to take next is jungle, because 50% of the reason why I main support is because my last hitting skills are about as smooth as snowshoeing naked through a minefield. But despite being a much better jungler, I prefer top lane over the jungle, especially with this tank meta that's running right now. Even though I hate that meta shift in and of itself, top lane feels a lot more homey to me because that's where a lot of the tanks tend to have their little pillow fights. If you really know me, then you know that when I go top lane, and I'm not against a really nasty hard counter, my pick of choice is Mordekaiser. And no, that's not a joke. Mordekaiser is who I wanted to talk to you guys about today, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that mid lane is really his niche anymore, and I touched on this a little bit in my my top lane Mordekaiser video that I put out a while ago, and I feel like I need to go a bit more in depth for you guys to fully understand why. Sure, top lane is the tank, pillow fight, happy fun time lane, but that's actually part of why I think Mordekaiser is better in the top lane. See, a good Mordekaiser player can build pretty much whatever the fuck he wants. To help you guys understand why I play him top lane so much, I'm gonna have to tell you guys a bit about his strengths and weaknesses. Let's start with his most obvious strength, the one that everybody seems to get so fucking pissed off about, his passive. Mordekaiser's passive allows him to tank stupid amounts of damage. This creates a very oppressive laning phase, which is also a weakness which I will touch on in a little while. But the main thing here is that the amount of damage that Mordekaiser deals has a direct correlation with how much damage he can tank. This means that a Mordekaiser with about 1,000 ability power can usually tank about as much damage as a Mordekaiser who built shit tons of health, because by dealing more damage, he gets beefier. Another one of Morde's really big strengths is his sustain damage. In a long extended fight with another tank, he'll probably come out on top because he has really good sustained damage, and his passive makes him a lot tankier. This is amplified by another one of his strengths, the fact that his ultimate does % health damage. I'm going to talk a bit more about the rest of his ult in a while, but for now let's just think about the initial cast. The spell itself deals % health damage, which is incredibly strong because top lane is so incredibly tank focused. So the more health an opponent builds, the more effective Mordekaiser's ult becomes, because he's healing that damage. Because you're top lane, you're probably going to need some magic penetration, because it's probably not going to be just health, but even so, against most tanks, build Sorcerer's Shoes or a Void Staff, and you're probably just going to be. So, assuming that you kill a champion that you ulted, you now have a ghost of them, and it may not seem that significant, but it really is. You see, first of all, you get bonus stats for killing people with your ult. You get 25% of their bonus health, and you get 30% of their ability power. That's nothing to scoff at. But apparently that's not enough. The ghost that you get from killing somebody with your ult does damage as if it were the same champion that you killed, but at level 1, and with bonus AD based on your ranks in your ultimate. And no, that's still not enough, because things like Ravenous Hydra and Static Shield that the champion built, they still apply! What the fuck? One time in a game of ARAM, I killed their Lucian with my ult, and I shot 3 enemies in the space of 2 seconds and got a quadra kill. You don't ignore that ghost. That ghost is fucking stupid. It gets even scarier when the Mordekaiser playing him knows how to micro the ghost. That's terrifying. But you don't just want to blindly ult one single person the entire game. Who you ult depends very much on the situation. Most of the time when you play Mordekaiser, you're going to be building tankier AP items like Abyssal Scepter, and I always pick up a Zhonya's Hourglass at some point early in the game. But sometimes when your team needs a tank, you can build a Spirit Visage and a Randuin's, and if that's the case, then you might want to just ult their tank, because then when their tank dies, you get 25% of their bonus health, and you get even beefier. On the other hand, if the enemy AD carry is fed, and you don't have as much damage, you might want to just ult them so you can, 1, kill them fast, and 2, turn them against their teammates, so they'd probably be the person to ult in that situation. But most of the time, if you're in a situation where the enemy AD carry isn't fed, and you aren't building like a tank, you're probably going to want to ult an AP carry, so you can get 30% of their AP and just be stupid stronger. The last thing I really wanted to touch on for his strengths is the fact that he uses health as a resource. Now, this makes it a little bit more difficult to itemize than if you were, say, playing Syndra, but you always are able to cast your spells, so it is an advantage. I personally like to run 2 spellbound points when I'm playing as Mordekaiser, because it allows me to stay in lane longer and bully my opponent. The main advantage that using health brings is that the only way you're not going to be able to cast your spells is if you're probably dead. This allows you to kick ass to your heart's delight, which is a great advantage in top lane, but it's also a contributing factor to his oppressive laning phase. Since I've come full circle to that point again, I'm going to start there for weaknesses. And yes, being able to zone your opponent is a good thing, generally speaking. However, this also makes you a better target for ganks, especially when you consider that Mordekaiser's auto attacks are kind of meh, so a lot of Mordekaiser players tend to last hit with their spells, which pushes the lane, and thus makes them easier targets to gank. During the laning phase, Mordekaisers, especially bad Mordekaisers, might as well just have a big flashy neon sign on the minimap that says, "I'm pushing my lane, please gank me now!" Mordekaisers tend to get ganked a lot, which leads me straight into my next point, which is the fact that Mordekaiser has no escapes built into his kit. If you're playing Mordekaiser, you better damn well take Flash. And this is actually one of the reasons why I like him top lane better. In the middle lane, there are two sides from which you can gank, but in top lane, you're in a corner of the map. That means that there's only one side from which they can gank you, though, I mean, yes, they do have multiple routes to gank you from, but you have the same problem mid lane. It's just that they're all coming from the same direction. If you know how to control your lane, ward, and watch the map, the only thing that you really have to worry about is an Evelynn roaming in like, "Wards? What wards?" Now, suppose that you're in an unfavorable matchup. Singed is a pretty good example. So you ping for your jungler, and for the sake of making this simple, let's just say that your jungler is doing well and nobody's counter jungler. So this jungle Udyr comes in with his Stalker's Blade and his red buff, and he smites Singed to slow him down, walks up, stuns him, and continues to slow him with red buff, right? Well, Singed doesn't care. Singed doesn't care at all, because Mordekaiser has no CC of his own. So since he's Singed, he can just, laugh maniacally, drink a potion, and then waltz away like nothing even happened. Mordekaiser specializes in sustained damage, so his burst is pretty mediocre. Especially when you consider that to do his best 1v1 damage, there need to be no minions near his target, no enemies at all near his target, so that his Q can do bonus damage. And on top of that, he has to be in melee range to hit it. I feel like I'm talking about Fiora now, because she has a lot of the same issues. This video is just turning into Sky talking about Fiora all over again. What the fuck? But anyway, these two things also detract from Mordekaiser's playability in top lane because he can't teleport gank very well. And that's a problem because it's one of the best ways to help a bottom lane that isn't doing very well, and as a result, it's a great way to help carry games. Generally, when you play Mordekaiser, a lot of the time you're going to be pushing and wondering if the game's going to last long enough for you to get either a Rylai's or a Gunblade. Whichever you prefer, but it's not necessarily a bad thing either. Pushing really hard means you're going to get a lot more towers, and it also means that allies are going to have less pressure on them, which makes it easier for them to take objectives. And isn't that a lot of what top lane is about anyway? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. And as always, stay beautiful, don't set fire to anything that I wouldn't, and you guys will hear from me next time. Peace out.